Hello everyone, welcome back to the Race.Dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk. My name is Joe and I'm your host for the show. If you're new to Hacktoberfest Help Desk, we are a resource to help you get all the information and tips you need this Hacktoberfest to land your pull requests, to finish up those pull requests and get that tree or tea. And we are coming to you 3 times a day with different special guests whilst Hacktoberfest is on. So we're getting close to the end now. We've only got 8 shows left, including this one. And we have another special guest out of us today, who I will introduce and bring onto the show in just a moment. Before that, though, a couple of house administrivia and things to run through to get you all set up for success on this show. First of all, the chat is open, and as I said, we are here to help you, so you can ask questions at any time. We will answer those questions as we go along. We will try and answer them as quickly as possible. If your question isn't directly related to what we're talking about, we might take a little while to get to it, but don't panic. We will get to it. We'll just finish the topic we're on before we circle around. But also, we're going to jump around and jump into some tangents. So feel free to ask those questions and rest assured we will get to them. If you want to post a link or share a link to anything you're working on or resources at any point during the show, that's totally fine. Just be aware we do have a moderation bot running that filters out links because Twitch is full of spam. So if you want to post a link to make sure you don't get... the bot doesn't think you're one of those spammers, just let me know in the chat by @ing RaiseDevs, and I'll add you to the permit list so you can post links. I just had to add our guest to the VIP list so that we don't get another guest banned, because as funny as that is, it's happened enough now. So that's that one. Next up, as I said, we do have many shows a day, and this is our second show of today. We have one more show after this. Stick around at the end and I'll give you a run through of the schedule and what's to come for the rest of the week here on our last week on the show. In the meantime, if you want to have a look, you can have a look at twitch.tv RaiseDevs schedule. But as I said, stay around at the end and I'll give you a run through of what's to come. So, the last thing for me before I bring on our guest, if you haven't heard of Race.Devs, you don't know what we do, we are a service to help you level up in your developer career, and how that works is we match you with expert coaches, folks who have gone and done software engineering in industry, who have got experience, the real world experience that you can only get from being in a job, and it's hard to get in universities or boot camps, and they want to work with you to give you the experience that you need to get your first developer job, to level up, to get a raise, to get a promotion, whatever it is. We will match you with a coach who will spend time with you, pair programming, working towards your goals, and get you everything you need to make that transition in your career. And we are completely free whilst we're in early access. Hey Floor, thanks for joining the show. Hey Hugh. Sponsored by the ad for the ridiculous stamps. Oh yeah, we're affiliate now. We have ads, don't we? I hope it was a good ad. I hope that was a juicy ad. I'm sure we got some pennies from that. Which is also, yeah, a thing that I still haven't really worked out what we're doing. We're an affiliate, which means, like, we get money from the stream, but we're also, like, you know, a company. So we will donate that money somewhere. I'm not sure where yet, but we will find a place to donate our Twitch bucks, our Bezos bucks. So rest assured, we'll let you know when we find a place to donate our Bezos bucks. Anyway, in the meantime, let me bring on our guest. Please welcome Ramón to the show. How you doing?
Hey everybody, hey Joe, thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm so excited. I mean, I've already, at the end of every show for last week, I've been raving about what you're bringing us today. So there's there's no pretense or mystery here. But
no
before
pressure.
I explode, would you like to introduce yourself to the folks in chat?
Yeah, sure. Hey everybody, my name's Ramón. Yes, as that copy pointed out, I got a bit of a spooky thing going on here.
You are the first Halloween guest we've had.
This is actually pre-set up for a talk that I was recording 2 weeks ago, so it's been spooky for a while.
It's been Halloween for a while for you, yeah.
Yeah, I'm freelance. I struggle to give it a title. I call it everything developer. I wouldn't say full stack because all the Docker and deployment stuff is still something I'm working on.
Right.
But yeah, thank you. A little bit, a dabbler. I like that. Yeah, so I do a little bit of web, a little bit of native, a little bit of mobile. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. I'm a freelancer. I've been doing this for 10 years now. And I'm coming to you from Vienna in Austria.
Awesome. Super cool. Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hugh Rawlinson is commenting on your keyboard on the shelf behind you in the tray.
The Atreus, yes.
Yeah.
This is an oldie. This is the wooden one that I bought a kid, and I had to sand it and oil it. And then they kickstarted this one, which is what I'm rocking right now.
This was the one you were just saying you were struggling. It was new to you and you hadn't got used to the layout yet.
Yes, they changed. Yeah. They tweaked the layout a little bit. I have a bit of an annoying habit of I really like building keyboards. So here's half of my Ergodox.
I can tell you that Hugh definitely sympathizes with that one. Oh, half of your Ergodox, nice.
Yeah, half of my Ergodox, which is, you could probably tell, a little bit tweaked for playing Overwatch.
Nice. Is that a Roadhog button? Perfect.
Yeah, I like Roadhog a lot.
Awesome.
He's a character on Overwatch. I love. Yeah, Love keyboards and games and stuff.
We're gonna have to. Everyone in chat is commenting different parts of your background. This is great. Boardfish, who is our very own Simon, the Rails dev who built the Rails.dev website. Hi Simon, thanks for tuning in. Says they like your Nintendo gear.
Yes, they probably spotted my near and dear pink Game Boy Pocket. I'm a bit of a mess. I apologize.
No, that's perfect. It's nice to have a fun background. I hide mine behind a green screen because I'm a coward. But there is a lot of mess behind that.
You know that whole thing about the whole streaming thing where you've got the perfect angle here. Everything here is perfect. Just move a few centimeters down and it's a disaster.
Well, the problem with our house is like we're in this like weird Amsterdam like loft thing that has windows everywhere. So like the office has a window down to our kitchen, which just like freaks me out. So it's gone. I had it. Anyway, enough of backgrounds. So as you said, you're a freelancer and everything developer. So for the folks on the show, how we're going to do this one, if you've tuned in before, you will know that we like to explore our guests' careers and how they got where they are, because as I said in the intro, Rails.dev is all about helping you get to where you want to be with your developer career. And as a freelancer myself, I want to talk to Ramón about his career as a freelancer and how that came about and how that is. And then towards the back end of the show, we're going to take a photo of his background and put it as my green screen. Amazing. Towards the back end of the show, we're going to change over to our favorite game, the old code review game, except today it's also old hardware. So we've got a 3-year-old JavaScript project. Is that correct?
That's right.
Awesome. And it's a dance mat controller.
That's right. It's got a story behind it. There's a sneak preview. Here I'm going to take a risk and move the camera.
Turn it down. Perfect. Awesome. Amazing.
You can see it there.
Yeah.
More on that later.
We have a cam ready to move to get to it as well.
Yes.
And we'll be back with that in a little bit. So first of all, freelance. So you said you've been doing that for a while. Run us. Where did your developer career start? Let's go from there.
I promise this is the short version.
I mean, you're welcome to be as long as you want. We've got 90 minutes. You can. This is your show. Take as long as you like.
So what? So Vienna, Austria. You probably can tell from the accent. I'm not. Right. I'm not actually Austrian. Sure. I'm originally from Chile.
Okay.
And I've been living in Austria for a very long time now. And when the time came to graduate from high school and think about what I'm going to do with my career, I was a very bad student, and I thought, well, I guess I do okay in the computer coding classes. I'll just stick with that.
Right.
For context, this is like 2005 or 6.
Okay.
And so when it came to going to university, I struggled. My German is, I would say, pretty good now.
Yeah.
No need to demo it on.
But also Austrian German is a little bit different as well from, I guess, like a lot of, and isn't like most of the resources were probably not Austrian German, I imagine.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of perspective. It took me a while to get accustomed to German, having been here so long.
Yeah. The only one I can remember is that they have a different word for potato.
Kartoffeln.
Yes, and it's.
Is that the weird one?
I can't remember which way around. I'll have to go ask my partner's German. I need to go ask her. I just go say it to her and see how she reacts.
Yeah, no, I see. When you're not a native, it's also like these nuances get lost as well.
Right.
So short version. I tried university here, and it's completely in German. It's public university, technical University of Vienna, and I spent many years joking. The only thing harder for me than statistics is statistics in German.
Amazing. Yeah.
I struggled a lot, and so I kind of, when it came for my father, who worked here as a UN worker, when it came time for him to retire, I was more than 18 at the time, and I had to start thinking, well, I need to now actually justify to the Austrian government why I'm here.
Being here, yeah.
So I looked into finding it. Yeah. Well, that's a whole rabbit hole in of itself. Yeah. But so when the time came to think about what to do, my girlfriend at the time, we were talking about me finding a job, doing some babysitting because I need to have an income in order to justify my staying here. And because finding a job as a software developer, especially a software developer who's not doing that well in university and doesn't have much to show for himself, it's kind of difficult to justify putting the resources for a work permit. You need to justify to the government here that I'm a better choice than a European citizen. And on top of that, an Austrian one. Anyway, I promise this is the short version.
No, this is a really useful perspective we haven't heard on the show before. So that's great.
Well, so I got very lucky and I applied for a Mac developer job. So,
Right.
okay, going back again, I
Yeah.
had purchased my first ever MacBook in
Right.
2008.
Okay.
And
Right.
I was like, oh, I love
What
Apple. Apple's great.
what OS X version was that been then?
That The one I bought, it was the transition from Leopard to Snow Leopard. So
Okay,
10.5
cool.
to 10.6.
Awesome. Okay.
And I was loving it. It was like I'd been using Windows my whole life, not much of a Linux person as a younger
Yeah.
as a younger kid. And I found a job ad for a Mac OS developer, and I thought, well, I have a MacBook,
Yeah.
I can,
I can
and I
write
guess,
software on it.
and I my wife was very encouraging and kind of, I don't know, she amped me up. I'm not normally like this,
Right.
so I just
Yeah.
applied and I thought, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So he, the CEO of this company said, look, I can't take you on, but you seem like a really nice person. I appreciate your eagerness to learn. Here's a book. Do I have that book here? Did I lend it to my sister? I lent it to my sister. One of the Big Nerd Ranch
Yeah.
Mac OS programming books. And he
I
said,
didn't realize they did books. I've heard loads about them. I thought it was all like screencasts and stuff. I didn't realize they did books. That's awesome.
I discovered them through the books, and these books are good. Like I got a couple here. The Android one, the iPhone programming. This was iPhone OS. It's it's old. Anyway, so he gave me this book and he said, look, take a few months, do some email support for my apps.
Right.
Let's read this book. I'll give you some easy coding tasks, and I can't take you on as an employee because of this regulation, but why don't you do this as a freelancer?
Yeah.
We'll get you what they call here a Gewerbeschein, which is German for a trade license.
I see. Okay. So he actually helped you get set up as like a freelancer and get registered and that kind of stuff as well. That's really nice.
Well, he pointed me in the right direction for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And so he kind of took me under his wing, introduced me to Ruby, which is what I'm programming mostly with nowadays. We were using it for our build chain for building the Mac OS apps.
Right.
So I just spent a few years doing that, working with this one client as a freelancer. Yeah. I call him mentor, client, friend.
Right.
Because there's a lot of titles there,
and
I'm bad at titles. Yeah. And so we spent some time doing this freelancing. And as I gathered skill, as I gathered confidence, I started branching out and trying out new tasks, new clients. Yes, like Ruby Motion. Floor writes in the chat. We have one app completely written in Ruby Motion. Oh, yes. Which is a tool that lets you write iPhone, Android, and macOS apps completely in Ruby.
Do I have?
Ruby.
That's
Ruby,
awesome. That's super cool. Yeah. I'm just now complete. I've used Ruby Motion on Android ages and ages ago.
It's very fun. It's a lot of fun. It does help to know how macOS apps are written. So
right.
My first professional programming language was Objective-C. Which seems outdated now, but I got to tell you, I'm so happy I did that because it gave me a lot of skills that I kind of brought into my later work. Things like pointer management, memory management, that sort of thing. Not panicking when you get, they're called NS-zombie errors, which are memory leaks in macOS land.
That's an imaginative error. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that's macOS for you. Well, so I started branching out and reaching out to new clients, attending meetups, the Ruby meetups, which Floor here in the chat was organizing at the time.
Right.
And
Eurocode being the famous one that's in many of your pictures.
Yes, a lot of Eurocode going on there too. So sticking to that, I started branching out. I kind of realized over the years that it makes a lot of sense for me. I kind of one skill that I've picked up a lot by doing freelancing and jumping between projects is to not be afraid of being stuck.
Right.
I wouldn't say I embrace it. It's not great to get stuck.
Yeah.
If I were to rhyme, I'd say it sucks to get stuck. But it's a part of it. And being able to navigate new code bases and that sort of thing, embrace new programming languages and their environments. I was able to jump into doing what I'm doing lately is more React Native, some Vue.js, that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Jumping around a lot.
That brings me to the first lot of questions I had for you as a freelancer is so often as a freelance, like as an employee, you join a company and you get an onboarding and you have time to ramp up, and everyone's like, in a lot of companies, it's like, hey, you're not expected to be productive until like X months and this kind of stuff. And obviously that's not the case as a freelancer, where often you're being parachuted in to do something on a short turnaround. How do you, like, when you get dropped into a code base that you're not super comfortable with, like what's your strategy for like getting up to speed with it? What kind of things do you look for?
That's a good question. I'd say there's a couple of them. First off, for me, a big thing is being upfront and communicative with the client.
Right.
Telling them upfront. So, for example, I took on a React Native piece of code for a few years ago, and I said, okay, it's going to take me, I'd say, this amount of time to get up and running. Of course, understanding that I'm not going to have the full picture. I try to consolidate where do I cut off some black boxes, if you know what I mean, in terms of the code base.
Like, there's the things I'm never going to look at, and I know they're there and that I will be interacting with them, but I don't want to understand them. I don't have time. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think accepting that, kind of accepting that I'm not going to have the full picture of the code base, but when needed, I can go there.
Yeah.
And take my time and get up to speed with that. That helps a lot. But informing my clients, it's a bit of a trade-off, and it does take a little bit of knowing how to talk to people in terms of how much in depth do you want to go in terms of technology of what they understand. I'd say a few years ago, I had my first experience where I have someone where I got onboarded onto a Rails project where the client was, I wouldn't say aggressively, but I would say definitely firmly against hearing what's going on in the code base. Just get it fixed.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So were they someone who had, like, was this Rails code base something they had previously gotten from another freelancer, or like they had it like wasn't something they developed themselves? They just bought an app in anger. Okay, cool. Right.
Exactly. No. So they'd been through a few consultants, and they had dropped out for whatever reason or not worked out. And then when it was my turn, she comes to me and says, "Hey, Facebook sign-in isn't working. Can you get it done? Give me a proposal for how many hours it's going to take you, and just keep me out of it."
Yeah. Which in some ways, like, there's some upsides to that relationship, but then also there's very much the like, hey, I have no way of explaining these problems to you because you're just not interested, and so how do we work together, right?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky line to toe, especially because they have information based on previous developers they've worked with, where they would say, for example, this was a video platform that for watching operas and that sort of thing, and you needed to keep in mind.
That's very Vienna.
That's true. So sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I completely interrupted you. They had with this previous. It was a video platform, and they had previous context from these other consultants who had cycled through.
Yes, right. The video player wasn't working anymore, and this was a video player provider. I can't tell you the name off the top of my head right now, but it wasn't working anymore, and so it was just like, it worked before. That's how they got to do it. This is how they uploaded the videos, and they had some processing pipelines for the video, for processing the video files. I learned a lot about how video works. This year in general has been a lot of audio video learning for me, as I'm sure for a lot of us. So it was there's that base knowledge that they have from working with previous developers. They have an idea of how much time it took those developers, not counting, for example, getting up to speed. So I think that's where being communicative and saying, look, depending on what kind of client contractor relationship you want to have, if you want to work with them for a longer time, you can tell them this investment is worth it because I'll be able, what not in this case with the video platform, but with other clients I've said, so for me the important thing is to leave this code so that when another me comes in, let's say something happens to me and I can't work on this code anymore, when another me comes in, I don't spend a lot of time spelunking into JavaScript package versions.
Right. Interesting. That's a very technologically involved project for one that's just bouncing through consultants. Yeah, cool. That's super useful. So the next question I was going to ask, and I've just got like a big collection of software freelance questions that I know folks want to listen to. So these aren't in any particular order, and feel free to bounce around. So the other one's got was like a lot of people who are interested in kind of like in doing freelancing versus employment have like lots of questions about like, like keeping their client pipeline full and are concerned about like, running on dry spells and not being able to keep up
Yeah.
like the amount of earnings they need. So I guess I have a whole bag of questions about like how you go about getting clients. And I think where I want to start with that is like you mentioned doing proposals, and I think that's one of the scariest things when people first start with. It's like someone asks me for a proposal and you're like, what do I put in this? What information do you need? How are you making that decision? How do you approach like pitching a client? I guess
that's such a good question, and I don't want to assume for anybody. But there's a part of me that suspects that everybody exhibits that tiny bit of fear when it comes to proposals, because what you're doing is essentially justifying why you want to charge X amount for a body of work, and that is, taking estimates into account, which is a whole other can of worms.
Which also, like software estimates, like no one's under the illusion that they're not just like made up. I'm looking for a particular word. It's like software horoscopes, basically.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah,
it's astrology. Anyway, yes, yeah. So everyone's under that impression. So like justifying them is hard.
Absolutely. I think. So proposals. Sorry, what the question was?
So like, how do you go about like making a proposal? I guess what do you include in the proposal?
Right. So I'd call it a bad. I do call it a bad habit working with other people. Is that I try to be overly proactive when it comes to saying something. So if I have any questions, I'm more of a here's my proposal. Right. Here's what I'm not happy about it, but not in a more let's say assertive way. Saying like my only concerns are, for example, I don't know if you'll want me to set this up so that it's, I don't know, distributed across several servers or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I will send off a proposal. A piece of advice that I got extremely early into my career from a fellow freelancer. This was like, I want to say 6 years ago, as they told me, whatever estimate you have, double it, because things are going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
It's still hard to do because at some point I start doubting myself and thinking, is my original estimate already the doubled one? Right, anyway, so but
that's a very good point.
Right?
Yeah. It's so important to do as well, because like it's not even just like things going to go wrong. It's also, as like a freelancer, like when you're in employment, you have the amount you're going to earn, but that you're guaranteed to get paid that every month. Whereas like freelancers have to charge, making up for the fact that like they don't get paid for vacations. They will have time between work, so it's good to add. It's important to add that padding just for those gaps too.
I mean, the way I think about it as well is that I'm kind of paying myself for several jobs, including things like accounting, marketing. Keep having that upkeep in a way that keeps my, I hate to call it a business, but it is a business up and running.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels like, especially when you're an independent freelancer, it always feels weirdly. Yeah, it feels weird to refer to yourself as a business and think of these things as business practices. But like, you're totally right. That like the time, and proposals is an example of this. There are so many things you do day to day that don't get you paid by a client, that take up that time, like writing a proposal, doing the accounting, like just generating invoices is a soul-sucking activity that takes a big chunk of time.
Absolutely. One thing we've started doing now that I think about it is I've started proposing to potential clients that we have a sort of, let's call it explore phase.
Yeah.
Which is a pre-project where we explore what the use cases, what the needs are for this particular project, just to make sure, because for me, what's critical is to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Right.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And so, and I mean, in a way, I'm also providing a service by helping a client, say if they're coming up with a new project proposal, to sort of solidify what it is that they need or want based against their budget.
Right. Yeah, and that sounds great. And also, it's like part of that. One thing I really like about that is, even if you get to the end of that exploratory period and like one or both of you are like, okay, this, like me working on your project or you working with me is not going to work out. You leave that client with, a better idea of what they need to be doing next. And you've had at least like, it's also kind of, people talk about employment interviews as being a two-sided process. Like when you interview for a job, you're also interviewing them, and like having a trial, like you don't get that opportunity as a freelancer a lot of the time, and like doing that exploratory period gives you that like, oh, I'm about to commit 6 months to you, just give that a try.
Exactly. It's it's also that two-way thing, like you said, with interviews. It's a two-way service as well, because you also learn from it how to provide your service better, how to better put things.
Awesome.
It's but it's not easy, I think. And I think, I would say practice does help, absolutely, but there's always going to be that level of putting yourself out there and getting ready for, let's say, a proposal to be turned down. What is it? Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I guess that's also, there's something else that I'm interested in, actually. So like an experience that lots of people have early in their job searching is like, I think the realization that it's a numbers game comes up pretty quick. That like you see people kind of straight out, like when they're first doing their job search, they'll apply for like one company at a time, put all their time into that one company, and then if it comes back bad news, they'll apply for the next one, rather than like putting out like 50 applications at a time.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's like true of like freelance as well, that you're working on many proposals or working on many potential clients at the same time, or is it more like a piecemeal affair?
No, that's a good question, because as I mentioned earlier, I've had this one, let's say,
one client
exactly, this one consistent client. We've been working on several things for years. It's not just macOS apps anymore. Now we're doing some food delivery stuff, some food for business. Anyway, so I've got that.
You've always got that foundation to build on.
That foundation is always there. So that's the one thing where I kind of fail, well, maybe fail isn't the right word. That sounds really arrogant, and I apologize. It's more like the one perspective I'm missing is that urgency. That I mean, again, what happened what's been going on this year makes things different, and we can go into that as well. But so when it comes to keeping lots of potential leads in the pipeline, I think it is important to have a cutoff point where you say to yourself, okay, maybe from a gut feeling or something, it's a risk, it's an inherent risk at the end, to say to yourself, okay, it looks like this is gonna start. So if say someone in the freelancer community comes into me and says, hey, somebody's I need somebody to take over this React Native project, are you available? It's a judgment call where I say to myself, actually, I think I've got something going on here. It ended up not happening, so I took a minor hit on that risk, but it's that's how risks work.
So it's so funny, like as you were going into that, I thought the way you were taking that, which is like I'm super guilty of all the time, is like someone will come to me with something and I will know full well that I have absolutely no time for like another client. I'm like, but it's there, I should take it while it's there, and then like before you know it, you're in trouble.
No, it's there's that question, there's that number, you were talking earlier about a numbers game. What is the number of ongoing projects that one should have at a time? I couldn't tell you what mine is.
I also find, sorry, go on.
No, it's, please.
I was gonna say, I also find like there's other dimensions to that as well, because like, and this is terrible, but there's also like, there's a who is it perspective to it, where it's like, hey, I have no time right now and I can't take on this client. Oh, but that's a big name that will lead to future work. I'll find some time. Kind of like, where like it's not just a simple equation of like, do I have enough clients to pay the bills? It's also like thinking about the bigger picture of like, I want to make sure that like in 5 years time that continues, and like what the work is, and whether it leads to more work, and who the name is, and all kinds
totally of because I mean at the end of the day you gotta as a business, you got to look out for your business and make sure that that these opportunities are lucrative, and we're all out here trying to survive. It does make sense to think, is this a good opportunity? Of course, personal health, super important. I think it was in 2 years ago, have my first bout of burnout because of overextending my and that taught me, don't do this. I mean, that was my own fault. I hadn't taken a weekend in 8 years.
But then equally, like it's so difficult. Like when you're employed, you have paid holiday, and like although employees really struggle to take vacation, like that's with the knowledge that they're still getting paid for it. Whereas like when you're a freelancer, you have that thing where it's like, oh, I'm not working right now, I am literally making zero money. Like it's so difficult to that psychological barrier to taking time off. Although, like as you say, like you get that extra to put aside for that. It's a big psychological hurdle to get over. So even on weekends, like that's still time. You still have that thing where it's like, oh, I'm not making money right now, which is
That's the thing. I got this incredibly bad habit 10 years ago where we were like my wife and I are watching Netflix or something, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching the movie and I'm thinking like, I could be watching this movie, or I could be watching this movie and making money. I don't recommend this.
No,
not at all. It divides your concentration. Multitasking is for me it is non-existent. But so it kind of it's easy to fall into that trap.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it comes from like once you start to think of your time in terms of like how much like your hourly price is, it's like, oh, that was an hour, that was that much, and it's a tricky thing I think for new freelancers to navigate.
Absolutely.
But you managed to get out of that, and that was you took some time off and recovered from the burnout, and I guess you found a way to mitigate that since.
Yes, I'd say it's not perfect. We're all human. We all have bad habits, but I have over time developed some strategies. Things like having much more strict time management in terms of things like, okay, it is 6 o'clock. I'm done. Yeah. Like no more. Laptop away. Switch away. Don't go away from the home office if you can. I can't. This is my living room. Try to create that disconnect. Time off, super important. Doing things like taking weekends, which was weird at first because I had to rediscover hobbies as something that I want to do and not something that I do guiltily, thinking, yes, I could be playing on my Game Boy right now, or I could be making some money.
And now you're building keyboards.
And now I'm building, to each their own. So it's practice, as Hugh says in the chat. It gets better over time.
Awesome, cool. So that was the big questions I had on freelancing. I want to make time to get onto your the time you spent teaching kids to code. Is there anything else you want to say on freelancing before we jump topic?
I mean, maybe if I can say something big is what really helped me with my pipeline is community stuff. And I don't say this as go to communities and only do community things in the hopes of finding work. What I mean is, for me, what helped was to get to know people, establish friendships, establish connections. And I kind of realized last year, maybe the word networking kind of gets a bad rap, because in my head, networking kind of meant like two people in business suits exchanging business cards, but it's not really that. It's getting out there, talking to people, asking for help when needed. People love helping, just like you do. The you is me in this case. That's the.
I think that's great advice, and it's like, I think one of the things, like when I first went freelance, people asked me like what I really enjoyed about it, and I think one of the things I call back to a lot was like, oh hey, it turns out like after 5 years of being in the industry, lots of people I worked with in the past are now in different places. Lots of people I met in the past are now in different places. And when I went freelance, it was like an opportunity for like to work with a lot of those people again, because I had that network and people were able to people had work, and I was lucky enough in that. Contact people you meet at a conference like 4 years ago and like build a bit of rapport with, like it's amazing the ways that will come back around. And I think the other thing you mentioned, the freelancer community earlier, which I wanted to go back on a bit, which is like, oh god, it's so good. The little group of like, I mean, it's not a little group, but like the network of like freelancers who, one of the things I really love about the freelance community is like everyone has their bubble, and you can say to anyone freelance like, hey, I'm looking for someone to do this, and they'll be like, that's not me, but here's another freelancer that is. And like you just like, it's so nice that like everyone's so supportive and passes work around and like calls on other people. And I noticed that you're in Array, which is a new thing that started up recently, which is very cool.
So that's a Discord, that's a subscription Discord that Andy Bell started for freelancers around the world to come on Discord, and it's like a community of very supportive people doing different things that I never thought could be freelanced, like developer
Very
relations.
educational. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you
That's
do,
me.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm the DevRel guy in there at the moment.
Well, that's the thing. So,
Yeah.
like, up until half a year ago, I thought DevRel was not.
Right.
And I don't say this badly, please.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was freelanceable, but
Right.
it totally is. Why not?
Yeah.
And we've got another one here in Vienna, the Vienna freelancers community,
Cool. Right.
where we give it a bit more of that specifically Viennese thing.
Yeah, you get the local context and the local
Yeah.
companies. And,
You learn the jargon.
Nice.
You learn the jargon.
Yeah.
Right now, the big jargon for us is the Jahresabschluss, which means I don't know exactly.
This sounds like me with all Dutch business stuff. I'm just like, whatever. Like, it's fine. I'm sure. Yeah.
I think I would define it as like the end of year closing.
Right. Yeah.
Return.
Like the end of the financial year or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so you get to know your little jargon, and by sharing this, and by, as you said, when somebody comes to you and says, oh, I've got this client I was working with earlier this year said, I've got this WordPress website that's broken. Can you help me with it? And I'm like, I haven't touched WordPress since my early 20s. I really shouldn't, but I do know someone who does, or maybe I don't want to do WordPress, say.
Right.
And then I know someone who specializes or who wants to do WordPress. I can pass them on accordingly.
Yeah, it's my favorite. Floor enjoyed your freelance.
Freelanceable. That has to be a word, right?
That's it. Yeah, though it is. It's not. It is now. The annual financial statement. Thank you.
Floor. There you go. Thank you, Floor.
Floor, how many languages do you speak? Okay, cool. So you also mentioned to me that you spent a lot of time teaching kids to code, which I guess comes into a little bit of the project we're going to look at later. I can see how those two things link. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that. How did that come out? What was it you were doing?
Well, that kind of came out of what I mentioned a little bit earlier about being assertive and outgoing. I was not a few years ago. So when I started looking at meetups in Vienna, meetups being these events where people get together and share mini talks or hobby talks or talk about general things freelancing, and they have a whole array of meetups for things like Ruby or I'm attending a lot of Rust meetups nowadays. It's a lot of fun, and I really love meetups. But when I first started going to them, I went to a Mac programmers meetup in like 2012 or something, and I went there and I was kind of intimidated because the imposter syndrome was real. And it was in German exclusively, and I felt really intimidated. It was at this hacker space, and nothing against the hacker community at all.
But it's a lot, right? It's a lot of like a lot of concentric circles of communities that you're still exploring.
Exactly. And I wouldn't say that I had a community per se at the time, or if you can't even say that. But needless to say, I felt very intimidated, and so I just went back to my hobbit hole, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not doing this. So I gave it some more thought. And because what I liked about these meetups, what I liked about seeing on social networks like Twitter, what people were doing was that they were coaching and teaching and sharing knowledge and open source. And it really, I was really motivated to give it a try, but I said kind of intimidated. And so I thought, all right, what else could I do? And so my mom and I, we've been coaching football. That is European football. In my old high school.
The correct football.
The correct football. The accent might mix people up. No, so soccer. At my old high school. And so we thought well, why don't my wife and I, we started an after school activity where we teach children to code. We called it computer game programming. We'd hold it once a week for an hour, and we'd have 5th to 8th graders. So that's 11 to 16-year-olds. 15-year-old. I'm bad at number. 14-year-olds. So we started doing this every week, and we thought, okay, we'll start by making games. And we were using a free piece of software called Stencil. Okay. I'll link it here if somebody wants to check it out. So let me see.
Is it Stencil with a Y?
It is Stencil with a Y. Cool. So I'll link it. I'll post it in the private chat. Cool. So what Stencil is, if you look at it now, it's a drag and drop user interface, very user interface oriented way of programming, which from a first look might remind you from the MIT project
Scratch.
Thank you.
That was MIT project was all I needed. I knew exactly. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scratch. That's it.
Yeah.
And what I liked about Stencil and Scratch is it removes points of let's say error from teaching, because when you're onboarding someone to something like computing and computer programming, there's a lot that you have to drop them into at once. A text editor, dealing with a terminal per se, or an integrated development environment, an IDE. There's a lot to jump into. So I thought, how do we minimize as much of this as possible and focus on what I want to teach the kids? Which what I would always tell them is, I want you all to feel like hackers. And I would always tell them, I'd show them the picture of the businessman with a ski mask on a laptop, stealing your money. And I'm saying, like, no, this is not what I mean when I say hackers. When I say hackers, I mean someone who solves problems in a maybe cheeky, inventive way.
Perfect.
And so the big focus for me was logic, teaching them that a computer doesn't speak the same language we do, and it's very. I would tell the kids, I tell them computers are dumb. You got to tell them what it is you want them to do. You can't just. And there's this video from a school, I believe it's in the UK or Australia. This teacher is teaching the kids how to make a banana sandwich or a banana peanut butter sandwich, something like that, and how to do it.
Banana sandwiches are a very weird UK childhood thing, so that would make sense. I was talking about this on Twitter recently, weirdly enough.
Exactly. And so the teacher would say, okay, kids, I've got 2 pieces of bread here and some peanut butter and some jam. What do I do? Put the peanut butter on the bread. So she'd be like, okay, take the peanut butter jar and put it on the bread. The kids would have a laugh, and then they'd be like, take the peanut butter off. Okay, spread the peanut butter on the bread. And then she'd be like, okay, puts her hand in the jar, smacks it on the bread, and they're like, no, use the knife. And so she smacks the peanut butter on the knife. It's all like this. And so I tell the kids, so Flora mentioned hackertyper.io. I'm sorry, I'm very easily distractible.
No, that's good. That's perfect.
Hackertyper.io is one of my favorite websites because you can just mash into the keyboard, and it'll just write out some C code, I believe, and it looks very hackery and very cool.
That's perfect. So Flora also said that activity you're talking about might be from CS Unplugged. Does that ring a bell?
The name rings a bell, but I don't know it off the.
I'll have a look. Sorry. So you get to the point where you're spreading the peanut butter with a knife, barely.
Yeah. So what I wanted to teach them was what I wanted to get through to them is how a computer thinks. Because I wanted them to appreciate what goes into a computer program. Also things like how much development time costs, and I would show them the hottest video games at the time, which just to show you how long ago this was, I was showing them Grand Theft Auto 5 and the first Destiny and Minecraft and that sort of thing, because a lot of them wanted to just jump in, come to this course, and an hour later have their own Minecraft. And I told them, that's great, but we're not going to get there in 1 hour.
Right. That's perfect. Yeah, that's
so. And teaching them, one step at a time. There's this game called Lightbot that is it's a Flash game. I'm afraid I don't know if it's still going to work, but I believe it's on.
So sad.
I believe you can still. I believe it can still be played nowadays. Sorry, was that me? Oh
no, that was me. I opened it on my. I saw a play button and I clicked it because I'm an idiot.
Who can blame you? So we wanted to spend a lot of time understanding logic and how these things work. And then what I would do, we would do this in a very step-by-step fashion. They would play a game where you play as a little chunky marshmallow jumping in a very Super Mario style. And the last level, there's no platforms. And the level says, please put in some platforms. So they would put in their platforms using the interface. Then we would, let me see if I remember, this was a long time ago. We would add, spin-off or subclass enemies.
Cool.
So there are these enemies that would walk around the floor, and so we'd add to them the ability to jump, and doing this. So the reason I picked games is because I wanted to go for that instant gratification. Right? They try something, hit play, it works. What I also liked about it is that it also it would give them the freedom to do whatever they wanted with it.
Right.
So they would always ask me things like, how high should the marshmallow be able to jump, or how many enemies can I have on screen? And I tell them, look, it's up to you.
Right.
Try it out.
Yeah.
So they would just mash that 9 key like it was on fire or something. And what happened? Their computer would slow down to a crawl because it had thousands of enemies on screen. And these were the old plastic white MacBooks. I'm talking from 2009.
Right. Oh, yeah, I mean that's a pretty nice classroom computer though. That's nice. That's like a wonderful way just to learn. I don't know, the performance and like the consequences of computer programs on the machine. Totally. I guess that's super cool.
Totally. And what would happen after a while is that they would get stuck with these problems, and it was just me and my wife, and there were like 20 kids. We wouldn't be able to help them all at the same time, so they would start going to each other, helping each other, giving themselves feedback on their levels and their enemy design. I loved it because it encouraged them to learn by themselves. It came to a point after a while where they were teaching me the keyboard shortcuts for stencil. Nice. They're like, oh, come on, Ramon, why are you like pressing play? Like, press Command B. Come on.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
That's the dream. Yeah. And that was me when I was a kid. I was tinkering around with the register on Windows, the registry on Windows, which I shouldn't have been doing. I broke too many Windows installations that way. But too much of my father's chagrin. But so it's what I liked about the games is that I let them do that. And when they got older, they wanted to try out 3D stuff, so we tried Unity, which was fantastic because again, it had a basis. There was something called they would provide something called an FPS controller or a first-person shooter controller, so that you could just plop them on a world. They could do their modeling, they could do their logic, but the base was there. And if they wanted
to like move around and steer the camera and everything is like
exactly, and the base was there so that they could do it. And what was great about Stencil as well as Unity is that you could export your game. Just like that, take it home on a USB drive and show it to your family.
And that was kind of the thing that looks amazing about Stencil is the fact that like it will also export them as apps, which is kind of wild.
Exactly. I mean, I haven't checked it in a few years, but it used to be that you could just export a SWF. I call it SWF. The Flash file. Just open it on your browser. You could take that SWF file and just take it home, and it was great. All the music was integrated in there. We did that. For a few years, we experimented with other things. Like we tried also, what's it called? For making music with Ruby. Sonic Pi.
Sonic Pi. Oh, right. Yeah.
Sonic Pi, which is a tool for making, which is an environment for making music in coding using Ruby. So you would type a command like play symbol C, and it would play the note C. Big word of advice: if you're teaching kids and you want to do music, give them headphones for your ear's sake.
Yes, absolutely, I've made that mistake. Very good. We had we spoke about Sonic Pi on an early episode, and I can't remember what it was with. But it's a super cool project.
It's amazing. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
So and what I like about that is that kids can the kids they're not afraid to break things.
Right.
They're as I was saying earlier with the whole
mash 9 until the computer
mash 9 exactly.
Yeah.
By doing that, you also realize that you yourself have a lot to learn in how to take how the things that you've learned so far are not to be taken for granted. Right. I remember struggling to bring it through to the kids that, for example, what's it called when a line follows another in terms of logic? It's
it's like tip of the tongue thing where like I'm never gonna be able to remember that.
Pragmatic? No. Well, it's this concept. Yeah, exactly. This concept where logically a computer program will follow the first line, then the next line, then the next line in terms of how to read the program. Yeah. And I took this for granted. Right. But so when we were doing things like using a variable and then defining it later, I wanted to bring it through to the kids that this is going to give you synchronous, says that copy. I'm not sure that's quite the word I'm looking for.
Oh my God. 1 second. It's going to drive me insane.
I'll keep going in the meantime.
Yeah.
Procedural. That's it. Thank you. Thanks. Exactly.
Procedural. I got halfway through typing the Google query before it came to my mind. Perfect.
Isn't that how it always happens?
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so bringing through to the kids that a program is procedural.
Yeah.
And I remember using this metaphor. I've mentioned it in a talk I gave about this. I remember mentioning to them, it's like a book. You don't read the last page first. You don't read the last letter, the last word first. You read letter by letter, line by line, page by page. And one of them would tell me, yeah, but what about choose your own adventure books? Isn't the whole point to jump around? I'm like, oh dear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Broken my paradigm.
You broke my logic.
Yeah. And that's when you introduce them to a functional programming language and set them off into the wilderness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. They would ask these questions. I think I reached a point in my career where I was no longer questioning things quite the way that kids do.
Right.
I remember when we were doing these stencil games, we had a coordinate system that we had to deal with, right? And the origin, that is where both the X and the Y coordinate, X being where you're along here and Y being along here, the origin is 0, 0. I hope I'm doing this right, at the top left.
Right. Which is not what you would do. It's not consistent between programs, but top left is definitely that's probably the weirdest one I've ever seen of that. It's usually like the middle or the bottom left, right?
Yes, exactly. So a kid asked me, like, in school with graphs, with Cartesian graphs,
it's bottom left.
It's bottom left. Yeah. Why are computer programmers doing it here? Right. And I had to go and look this up. And I learned it's because of how old monitors would render.
Right. It made the most sense. Top left and they go top to bottom.
Yes. Okay. There's a video where I think I'm gonna.
Is it like an old CRT beaming and like filling in the screen? That's super.
I think somebody was playing the original Super Mario Brothers on an old CRT monitor and got one of those slow-mo cameras and slowed it down.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Sorry, I'm not very good at multitasking.
Totally fine. Like,
and
appreciate the link.
The slow-mo guys. I'm gonna. Here we go. It's super cool. First of all, it looks like an existential nightmare. But it's amazing to see how these old TVs. So what would happen is these old TVs, these old monitors, CRT, which I learned stands for cathode ray tube,
right?
Renders line by line, like, and then the next line, and that's how each pixel is rendered.
Right.
And I didn't provide a timestamp, but if you jump in a while, you can see there it's kind of going like, and it's kind of horrifying and really beautiful. Yeah. And that's why they had this old coordinate system. But see, if a kid hadn't asked me that, I would have probably gone on for the rest of my life not wondering, because I just thought, okay, that's how these devs
it's just assumption. It's how it's always been. Yeah. It's like, I guess, like, this is kind of the curse of knowledge situation where, like, once you know something, you cease to question it. It's hard to put yourself in the feet of someone who doesn't know it and think about the kind of questions they would come up with.
Absolutely. Cool. Absolutely. Nice. And I'm really grateful, because then it taught me to take a step back when I'm learning something new, a new framework. If let's say it's a new way for React to do something, for example, the change from classes to hooks, I started wondering to myself, okay, why is it that they did it this way? And actually be more curious, be a little more fun, have a little more fun, and look into why these decisions are made, or what the impetus is for them.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Bouncing off of that so go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, like, this totally doesn't just apply to kids, by the way. Like, if you want to, teaching is a lot of fun. I spent many years also coaching for Rails Girls workshops, which is an event where you during a day you install Ruby on Rails on your computer and make your first ever website. They've got workshops around the world.
I was about to say, what is happening with them now because of the Travis Foundation?
That's separate from the Rails Girls Summer of Code.
Perfect.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Rails Girls is its own thing that runs several events. I believe in Berlin they're now called Code Curious.
Cool.
In order to expand from just Rails and the
gendered language in the name.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And so in terms of what I think I'm by myself now. So in terms of what happens with Rails Girls, you go to these events and you meet people from so many different backgrounds, and you're having.
Sorry about that.
Hey!
This sounds so stupid. I accidentally knocked my mouse against the side of my keyboard, and it hit like the thumb key that navigates your browser backwards.
Oh no! So my stream for a second has fluorescent.
Yeah, no, I just abandoned you for a second. I'm so sorry. Anyway, hi. I hope you had fun while I was gone. There's the link to Code Curious. What did I miss?
Thank you. No, I was just saying that that these workshops where you meet people from so many
Yeah.
diverse backgrounds who are curious about programming,
Yeah.
and it's an opportunity for you to also learn how to communicate your ideas. It helped me a lot with my freelancing to be
Right.
able to communicate these things. Even something like, even something like
Thanks,
a
Flaw. I appreciate your support.
even something like how an HTTP request works, how a browser
Yeah.
works when
Yeah.
um, from trying to what happens when you put in a URL into a browser,
Yeah.
these sort of things. It again taking the step back and thinking, why are these things the way they are? Why
Yeah.
um, taking a long step back,
Right.
doing these things for so many years is what got me motivated and curious once again to give university a proper
Right. Yeah.
and I'm not sorry for saying it this way, the old college try,
Right.
because it
Yeah.
that experience made me curious for learning
Right.
in
So
in
you went back to university after that initial
yes,
attempt. Awesome.
yes.
Cool.
I'm on my 13th year of my bachelor degree.
That's amazing. That's super cool. And
You know,
is it CS, or have you now started like branching out and exploring other things?
it's a software engineering.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, so
Nice.
still super tricky because you
Yeah.
need to learn things, things like process scheduling
Right. Right.
in an operating system, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. I'm doing an OpenGL course right now.
Which absolutely, I dabbled a little bit in OpenGL in my degree and instantly decided I'm never touching graphics ever. Like,
Well, so I did some OpenGL in Rust and
right.
some WebGL in Rust, and I thought this is dope.
Right.
I'm gonna keep doing it. And then
Yeah.
I went to this course, and they're like, well, you can only do this in Windows
Right.
because we need you to use Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code,
Right.
Visual Studio,
Yeah.
which I'd never installed before in my life,
Yeah.
except for some reason every Steam game wants to install it.
Yeah.
And
The DLLs, whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah, and so and installing that and learning C++ in order to do this, which I'd never done C++ before.
Right. Right.
But it got me motivated to, you know, to try
Yeah.
to try again, and everybody learns differently, of
Yeah.
course.
For sure. For sure. And also, I imagine like a big challenge about that and that length of time, as well as like what computing is and how computing is being taught, must have changed so much between like the years that you've been doing that. And there must be a lot of like, oh, that thing that I studied like last time I did this course is now not actually a thing anymore. I guess I'm starting that again. That must be really challenging.
Totally. If I may digress one last
Please,
time.
no, you're very. That's what the stream is about. We're always going on tangents.
One of my
Yeah.
sort of breathtaking experiences was
Yeah.
I took a course at uni called web engineering, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which was about web apps, and I thought,
Yeah.
okay, this is interesting. This was 2011,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm taking this course, and I saw that one of the things we're going to do in this course is Ruby on Rails, which
Right.
I would say was maybe at one of the peaks of its popularity at the time, for sure. And so I go to this course, and they're like, okay, great. Now everybody install Apache Tomcat, and we're going to do some Java server pages
Yeah.
and Java beans,
Yeah.
stuff like. I don't remember any of this.
Yeah,
I just
stuff that
remember,
like you will never ever encounter as well, unless you work in a particular kind of enterprise hell.
unless I'm mistaken, this is technology from the early 2000s or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So we were doing this, and our last lecture was oh, hey, by the way, this is Ruby on Rails. This is how you set up a web. But don't worry.
Oh, I mean,
this is not a
at
big
least they gave you that look at the future. Like, yeah.
Yes, this is what you could be doing
Yeah.
if you weren't studying.
Fascinating. That's such a weird glimpse into like academic self-awareness that they're starting to like they see what they should be teaching but haven't quite got there to following through.
Totally. And so I took a look at that course now because I'm looking at graduating and seeing if my
Right.
grades are still valid.
Yeah.
Most of them are, thankfully.
Awesome.
That same course is now doing Express.js,
Right.
and like you in the course you do
Yeah.
JavaScript. You just
Yeah.
do Java. You set up. I think you make a React app with
Cool.
something with Express.js. I didn't look at all of it, if I'm honest,
Right.
but like things move
Yeah.
along, and that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really refreshing to see.
That's awesome. Very cool. Huh. Neat. So yeah, on the spirit of exploring new things, let's jump into your project, shall we? That sounds fun.
Sounds good.
Cool.
So
Yeah, do you want to explain what it is? Because I'm so
Yes.
excited. I want
So
to grab my water 1 second.
go for it. So what this project is called it's called Dance Mat JS. And what happened is there's this game from the arcade from the late 90s, early 2000s called Dance Dance Revolution.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. You've got a mat on the floor, or a series of buttons on the floor that denote each arrow, up, down, left, and right. I'm going to call it DDR from now on. Thank you, that copy. So DDR, you've got these arrows up, down, left, right, and you've got some arrows moving up along the screen, and you press those buttons to the rhythm of the music, and through some sort of miracle, it looks like you're dancing.
Right.
And I love this game as a kid. I had it on my old PlayStation, and I would have my friends over. We'd have DDR parties, and it was the best. Somehow, and yes, thank you, that copy. The height of cheesy. I don't even know what to call it. Just like Eurobeat.
Right.
Like high beat.
Is the best possible description of it, I think.
Yeah. I gave a talk about this project at JSConf US last year, and they had a 90s theme going on, and the music they played in between talks was so fitting. I didn't even have to worry too much about getting that feeling through. So anyway, so this game exists, and it's a lot of fun. And then I got my wife into it, I want to say 5 years ago. And she really loved it. And so the way you can play it now is you can have the old games on your computer, or there is an open source project called Stepmania.
Okay,
I'll link it to it here. It's still actively developed, and I actually presented the same project at JavaScript 100 in Bangkok earlier this year. And one of the organizers of the conference was an ex-maintainer of Stepmania.
Oh, that's amazing. It's
a small world. I love it. We worked on, so we had this thing, and we loved it. You can buy foam mats, right? Which have these contexts, and the same way you press the buttons, you dance to the music, and that was great. But the problem was that these buttons would wear out over time. These mats would cost something like 30 euros, $28, something like that.
And they're taking a beating, so it's not surprising they wear out.
Yeah, that's a sign that we were loving it. So then we started looking. They sell metallic ones too. Now, the last time I checked, you could buy one of those for something like $600.
Okay.
Right? So that's a lot of
commitment to DDR. Yeah.
Yeah, which, don't get me wrong, I'm up for it. But then I thought there's got to be a more, let's say, affordable way. So we were at one of these hack. Oh, the name just escaped me. They have these events where people get together and show off their hacky projects. And I'm sorry, the name escapes me. Okay. And they've got them around the world. And there I'm introduced to the folks who make this thing called bare conductive paint, right? And I used to see these videos from them on YouTube where you could use this paint to draw circuits, right? So you could draw your own circuit, and you could have a line between a lamp and a battery, and it would light up, and it was really nice. But what I didn't know is that they were also capacitative, right? Which means that if you touch it, it gives it a charge,
right?
And that's
the same way that touchscreens work, for anyone who hasn't heard about.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not pressure. It's capacity. It's the electricity that you carry in your body.
Right.
So I found this paint, and I started thinking, like, okay, all right, this is pretty fun. And then I found that they had a way that they had this device called a cap. I'm going to show it to you shortly. That you can connect to a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino or many other devices. And sorry, I'm just going to close the door real quick.
All good. We're all working from home. Background noise is a reality of this situation. We had a guest the other day who had a very cute and very angry dog. Anyway, so bare conductive cap, which I've just posted in the chat, which we'll see very soon on your desk.
So the Pi cap, it allows it to be scripted in any programming language, and bare conductive provide a lot of frameworks that you can install into your Raspberry Pi or whichever other device and interact with it. So I thought, okay, I've got my Node.js, I've got my Pi cap, and so we thought we would make a DDR mat out of this bare conductive paint and a Raspberry Pi. So how do we do this? I'm going to show.
Which will we do in the camera, the iPad camera?
Yeah, let's look at the iPad
Right,
camera
cool.
first.
There you go.
So hello, look at so what? Here, I'm gonna try and get a good angle on this.
All right.
So
We've learned some things since the since the show with Flacky. This is a Flacky trick we're employing right now.
how do I look at the other camera? No matter. So, this is gonna be a bit weird, and I apologize.
It's fine.
So,
We're making it happen. As Floor said, professional stream.
oh, great! I can look at myself doing it. Okay, so what you see here is the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Now, what you see attached to it is called a hat.
Right.
I don't know what the acronym HAT is for, but it's.
I've actually always wondered that, and I've never googled it.
It is something. It's like heads on top. Something.
It's something with the head pins, right?
Yes. So the Raspberry. It's not as dangerous as it looks. I promise.
It's also called a fire hazard. Nice. Hardware attached on top is what it stands for, and honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed. That's like too simple and too obvious.
I felt the exact same way.
Yeah.
So what you see here, right, is, as said, attached via the hat. There.
Yeah.
That's a good angle. That's the Pi cap, and the Pi cap comes with this series of little holes in it.
Yeah.
These are called electrodes in this context.
Yeah.
And what you see, so each of these you can script to react to when it's touched.
Right.
So I can touch one of them now. I'm going to see. Yeah. If I touch one of them now,
this bigger.
I think, cool. Thank you. So
No worries.
each of these, I can touch it and it'll react essentially.
Right.
And then I can catch that in a script, which we'll go into shortly,
Right.
and then do stuff with it.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. You've got two power entries into a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right.
What, two USB? One. I'm sorry, it's so blurry. I have no idea how to focus.
No, it's all good. I'm actually let me try it. Oh no, that's the wrong way around. You don't want me. You want this one. How do I put that one? Oh, never mind. We have to make full screen. I wanted to have you on there as well, but this we'll have to do.
No problem. Cool. So what you see here on the right is the usual power one. This here is the USB one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this USB is connected to my computer here. Pardon the mess.
Yeah.
And that, now you notice that the Pi is connected to a couple of, I don't know what to call them. I call them crocodile clips.
Yes, the crocodile clips is what we call them.
Great.
Yeah, makes sense.
Crocodile clips. And each of these is connected to this, which is the dance mat itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
and that black stuff is the conductive paint, I'm guessing.
Correct. Cool. And each of these has a crocodile clip attached to it.
Right.
So that I can paint it. Now, there exists a much bigger version of this. This is what I call the demo unit.
The desktop DDR.
The desktop DDR, yes, which is harder than the foot one, believe it or not. This here is the start button, lovingly drawn by my sister Pilar.
Excellent.
And so each of these. So what you're probably wondering is, okay, I got this. We'll look at the code shortly, but I want to go into how this interacts with my computer. So this Raspberry Pi to my computer is nothing more than a USB keyboard.
Okay.
So whenever each one of these is pressed, I'm a Vim user, so you might recognize these. This will press H, this will press J, this will press K, and this will press L.
Perfect. Okay, so it's just sending key presses, so you're not having to decode anything. Awesome.
Exactly.
Very cool. Yeah.
And I think the cat is enter. I could be wrong. I haven't looked. Actually, we'll find out together when we look at the code. Okay, so I think we can go back to me.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
We will come back to that shortly.
Cool. Floor said something definitely went wrong on the right side of that hat. I'm guessing that was conductive paint on the contacts on the right side.
Could be.
Or was it burn marks?
No, there's no burn marks. In fact, I'll show you later. I'll give you the big reveal of what this mat is made of later.
Cool.
So the big problem with this project was chalk it up to my lack of experience at the time. You can't just plug in a Raspberry Pi into a computer and expect your computer to treat it like a keyboard.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
To a computer, a Raspberry Pi is a Raspberry Pi.
Right.
So, Raspberry Pis run on Linux. Yeah. So you put an SD card running Linux on it. Yeah. This is a Raspberry Pi Zero for context. They're very small, cost $10.
Very cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I needed to tell the computer by turning my Raspberry Pi into what's called a USB gadget.
Okay.
I've got a whole mess of documentation on this
Yeah.
that I'd like to share with you.
Awesome. That sounds great.
So
is this
here's
like? Oh, it's an API. I was about to say, it's just like an API, and it looks like it.
yes. Now,
I stick
what?
to it.
Yes, the kind folks says I stick to it. I can't vouch for them. I just found this blog post and I thought this is very helpful.
Yeah.
What I did here is what they allow you to do is that the Linux environment allows you to turn on a couple of kernel extensions.
Okay.
I'll see if I can. Would it be possible to share my screen as well?
Yes, there
so
you
we
go.
can go through this together.
There you go.
Because I thought that would be nicer. Let me just make it bigger. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Yep, that looks good for me. Anyone in the chat, if you have any issues, let me know. But that looks good on my screen.
Excellent. So what we're doing here is setting up a couple of kernel extensions to tell the Raspberry Pi to be to act like a USB gadget, not as a USB keyboard. We'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
So once you run these couple of scripts that tell the Raspberry Pi, okay, you can act as a gadget, which allows it, amongst other things, to be powered on by plugging the USB port into the computer.
Interesting. So like USB to wake up kind of situation.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. Okay. To power up.
Yeah.
Then we need to run a script to mount what's called a config.fs file. Now, I learned that Linux has several kinds of FSs, which are file systems.
Right.
For example, when you mount a drive, you're kind of mounting another file system. When you plug in a USB stick, you're essentially mounting another file system. Like if you have a FAT32 disk stick on a Mac OS keyboard, then you're mounting another file system. So we run a script, run that script on boot by writing content to the RC local file. This RC local file is a script that gets run whenever you turn on a Linux machine. Cool. Sorry. Whenever you boot up, I just wanted to see if I could zoom in just a touch more.
Cool.
And then you run the script, and this is a big copy paste with a couple of instructions to tell the computer, hey, I'm a USB keyboard.
Sure.
But there's three important parts here which I took to heart. These three here. You see, when you plug a device into a USB device into Windows, and Windows has to install firmware to interact with it. Yeah. It likes, you'll see at the bottom right.
Installing so-and-so device, right?
Exactly. So if you want to have your name on it, Ramon's DDR mat.
Nice, cool.
Instead of I stick to it USB device, you put DDR mat. Yeah. You are the manufacturer, of course.
Right. Nice, yeah.
And you can come up with your serial number.
Nice.
So once that's done, I can switch off my Raspberry Pi, plug it in, and then the most magical sound will go off. It'll go dun 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 dun, which means it's been recognized as a USB device.
Right.
Once you do that, what comes next is to learn how to interact with USB over what's called the USB HID, which stands for Human Interface Device, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
It does.
It sounds better than hardware attached on top. So that's like a much better acronym already.
So here you'll find what will happen is your Raspberry Pi will show up. I was doing this mostly on your Raspberry Pi. Will show up a file.
Right.
In Linux, you've got file descriptors, right?
Okay.
Which are files that are used for I/O, that is input and output. So, for example, I work a lot with thermal printers for a client of mine.
That's cool.
And it's a lot of fun. It's very addictive to mess around with them. And what I'm doing here is I've got a script that pipes data into a file, and that file is wired up to my printer so that the printer knows, hey, I've got data. I'm going to print now. And the same goes for the Raspberry Pi. I've got a file on my Raspberry Pi that I can pipe to.
Yeah.
And then the Raspberry Pi will type.
That is a fascinating level of jank. That like I can't believe that's how it works. I had to take a little moment and go like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So what?
That's also like so beautifully Linuxy. It's like, hey, you're like everything in Linux is piping things through files, including being a keyboard. So like,
Totally. So what I essentially had to do was write a script that when it presses one of the electrodes.
Oh dang! Hey Layla. Sorry, Ramon. Hey Layla, thanks for raiding with 38 people. Welcome to the show, folks.
Oh wow!
For some quick context for all of you, since you've just like quadrupled our view account, we're here with Ramon, who is currently showing us a Dance Dance Revolution controller built with a Raspberry Pi and JavaScript.
So, yeah, hey everybody. So we were talking about how we got this Raspberry Pi set up as a USB device to talk to the computer.
Yeah.
And the device, and then I would have this Node.js script that whenever it would detect a touch on my dance mat, it would just pipe data into the file.
Right.
And then the file will tell my computer, I have typed the letter A. So what I'm doing is
amazing nonsense. I love it.
And what it's essentially doing is sending keystrokes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's.
Can I? Sorry, I'm sorry to obsess about this file. So, are you appending to the end of that file each time, or are you just like overwriting the contents each time?
Does it? You know what? I'm not sure.
Okay, cool. No worries. This is totally relevant. I'm just absolutely fascinated with this idea, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life obsessing about the idea that a file can be a keyboard. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
No. We might be able to find that out by looking at it shortly. Mm-hmm. So, what I've got here, so folks, just so you know, I wanted to be able to load up the code on the Raspberry Pi and mess with it.
Right.
But I think this SD card is on its last legs, and it's getting very slow, and I'm a little scared to SSH into it. So
totally fine. Oh yeah, so that's the other thing. For context, for the folks who've just tuned in, what we're doing is we do this fun thing on the show called Old Code Review. Git Blame is what we call it, where we ask a guest to bring a project they worked on in the far past, and we review how they did it and talk about what they would do differently today. So this DDR controller that Ramon is showing us is 3 years old. 3 years ago.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes.
So that SD card sounds like it's on the end of its read-write cycle, so I appreciate your fear.
Yeah. So what we've got here is a piece of code which, full context, I copied the base part from the how-to of Bare Conductive. Cool. They're the ones that provide the
hat.
The paint that I can touch. So I hope this is visible. Let me make it I don't know, on my computer, on my copy of the stream.
It looks great to me. Anyone in chat, if you're having problems, let us know. But the
yes,
editor
please.
Is big enough, and your color scheme is wonderful.
Thank you. This is Dracula. I don't. I just like the name. I like Dracula a lot.
It's very, very appropriate to your spooky theme.
True. Yeah. Well, so what you're seeing here is a couple of things I import. We'll get into those because they are important. The first one we'll focus on is MPR 121.
Cool.
This is the PiCap itself, right? This is where we'll set it up.
Right.
Here on line 25, you'll see that I define it and I set up a touch threshold and a release threshold, because what's happening is when I touch the paint, I'm not the capacitative nature is that it's not actually from me touching it, but as soon as I get a little bit of touch close to it, I'm getting a little bit of a charge through it.
And
so
that's what the threshold is, that you get an actual number. It's not just like binary yes or no. There's a range of charge.
Exactly.
Cool.
I don't know if there's any unit that this is appropriate with, but
hopefully someone who knows about electronics will let us know in the chat.
Well, cool. So I set up the PiCap to be able to, just by testing, how much is too much, how much is too far, how much is to go for the touching and the releasing.
Cool.
Once I do that, here we've set up a callback loop, right? And what I'm doing with that is checking the sensitivity. You see that I'm getting past a chunk of data.
Yeah.
This chunk of data is a series of, it's a list of which electrons have been touched and which ones haven't.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So not electrons, electrodes.
The electrodes on the Pi hat, that row.
Yes.
Cool. Right.
Yes. Which we'll take another look at once I do a little demo of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so I'll parse keys from that series of electrodes, and then I will I will turn that into a nice byte array keystroke, and pipe that over to my device file.
Cool.
So we're doing this on a loop.
Yeah.
Constantly. I don't know what the rate is, but
Right.
It's just constantly checking.
Constantly looking for new input. Yeah.
Exactly. And the data that is just a chunk of, I believe, ones and zeros.
Right.
That just tells me which ones are pressed.
Cool. Nice.
I'm a good citizen, so when I quit, I will close up all of my devices and pipes.
Right.
So before we look at how the piping works, let's look at the parsing the pressed keys. So for those of you that saw it, there are 12 electrodes on this Raspberry Pi, on this Pi cap. So what I did here is I defined buttons, and each of those has a hexadecimal value for which key it is.
Cool. So that encodes the HJKL that you had.
Exactly. So you might... Oh, these are not accurate. Or maybe I was lying to you and it wasn't HJKL, and I kind of hoped it was.
I mean, there's HKL there. Where's up? Oh, GHKL. It's kind of Vimish.
Vim-ish. Maybe I was still learning Vim at the time. So I defined these buttons: up, down, left, right, start and back, left, right, up, down, start and back for player 1 and for player 2. Because here's the thing. It's a keyboard. Doesn't matter how long the wires are. I could have 2 players. And our original prototype... let's do it. I'm going to show you my mess.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, so for the folks who just joined us, this hardware does still work. We have another camera, so let me add the iPad camera back. Let me know when you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
Okay, then we get rid of the screen, put that back. There you go, and I'll make that big. So there we go. We're on an iPad going to the hardware.
So we're going to look at the old prototype of the hardware. We're in the middle of cleaning up our apartment, so I apologize in advance.
Oh, all good. Everyone's apartment's a mess. It's a pandemic.
So you'll see here, this is not the work. This is not our old prototype. This is a proper phone.
That's an actual DDR mat. Okay.
But behind it,
oh god,
my Mario Galaxy poster.
Yeah.
Behind it is, let's call it the Mac 1 of the prototype.
God, it's huge.
It is very big, and it is painted on a yoga mat.
Nice.
Because we thought, hey, let's. There you can kind of see it better.
Yeah. Bigger than the original map.
It's much bigger than the original map. Yeah. So let's go back to the screen, if that's fine.
Yep, there you go. Hi everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, wrong way around. There we go. Back from our brief iPad break.
So. Oh,
we're getting you twice. You need to plug the headphones back in. This is also an incredible hack, by the way. Join if you want to show a hardware device on StreamYard. Join with an iPad and plug headphones into it.
So here's the thing. For some reason, my iPad isn't letting me mute it all the way. So I just plug headphones into it. No more feedback.
Perfect.
So we did that, and the great thing about it is that since it's a long yoga mat, we can just paint on 2 players and play next to each other.
Oh, amazing.
Don't paint them so close to each other, folks. You will bump into each other.
Yes.
So, back to code. Yeah. We've set up the hexadecimal keys, and these I got from the USB HID, that is Humor Interface Device guide. It is one heck of a PDF document. I ended up giving up and going to Google and being like, hexadecimal keys. So they were up on GitHub somewhere. Cool. So those are my keys. Now let's look at parsing them. And this is just one big ugly switch case statement that takes the keys. We create an array of pressed keys, and just for each array, for each index of the electrode, if it's pressed, we just add onto that list of parsed keys one of the keys. So for the zeroth one, it's left, right, up, down, and so on. So you can, in theory, have all of them pressed.
Cool. Right. Which I imagine the DD, like the game wasn't built for can you do simultaneous? Okay, of course you can.
Totally.
There's some jumps for it. Yes.
Exactly. That's where you get the jumps. And so if you have 2 players, you want to have as many as possible.
Right.
So once I do that, I pass that array onto this.
Right.
Which is just making absolutely sure.
Yeah. Did you answer your own to-do there?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
It's modifiers.
Okay.
So you see a keystroke is made up of an 8-member bit array.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the first 2 are modifiers for things like shift and other modifiers that I can't think of off the top of my head.
Control, Alt, I don't know. One of them.
I guess those are modifiers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'm pressing too many keys, I just hack off the end of it to make sure it's 8. So there is a limit to how many keys I can press.
Yeah.
So once I do that,
Yeah.
we're at this part here where we
Which
are.
is all happening on the Pi. This is all happening within the bare conductive hat on the on event. What's the on event in the process of the bare conductive hat mean?
That's just I don't know. That's a good question. Well, maybe we can find that out. But off the top of my head, it is. So what is it?
We're gonna go find the bare conductive hat docs.
I hope PyCap will do it. Bare conductive.
Is there a? I guess this JavaScript library will be on. Okay, awesome, perfect. Great,
Okay.
cool.
Let's make this bigger. That's control.
So they're a client node client. I guess was it a client in SDK? I don't know. The node library for this piece of hardware is on GitHub. On their GitHub, which is nice.
Exactly. And here you can see what's going on. So this is the address for the PyCap. So I'm initializing it with this very specific address because it's this very specific device.
Right.
And then for the data, but I don't know what's this on. I guess it's a JavaScript event whenever there's new data on the
that makes
itself.
Sense. It's weird they don't document that, but I guess if it's the only way of interfacing with it, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, cool. I guess. Well, there you go. So you can also differentiate whether it's a new touch or it's a new release, which I don't, because all I care about is whether it's pressed at this time or not.
Right.
Right. So jumping back in, then what I'm doing is taking that byte array and writing it to my device. And here comes the last key to this little script.
Yeah.
This script, in order to interface with the device file on Linux, I need to set up all of the file, which file it is, what kind of how big the byte array is, and that sort of thing. And I was really shocked and really thankful that there exists a npm package called Linux device.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll bring it up here because I was amazed that it worked, that it existed.
Yeah.
Linux device.
Huh. Throw that in the chat as well.
Yeah, so this is for interacting with Linux devices, and so if which I still am, if you're new to this sort of thing, this is pretty handy for figuring out how to communicate with Linux devices in an npm script,
which is wild.
Yeah,
super cool.
So I was able to open up the device, give it my HID file descriptor.
Right.
This is dev hid G0. If it doesn't work, then we just
error. Yep.
Just error out. And then when I've got my byte array ready, then I just device write.
Cool.
And so each time that happens, it's a keystroke.
Right.
And that keystroke. So the thing about a keystroke is I'm either pressing a key, many keys, or no keys. Okay. So having no keys is also technically a keystroke in the context of this, because in DDR there are some dance moves where you'll need to hold down a button for a while.
Right.
Like it's got a little meter that shows how long. Then you got to let go. So
I'm like my memory is like going back to like 2001, trying to remember what DDR looks like.
Cool. And that's the script.
Awesome.
So
that's surprisingly simple, but
it's I mean, there's a couple of things that I had to wrap my head around.
Yeah, there's like weird, talking to Linuxy tricks, but very cool.
Yes, and that was new to me, but I'm very grateful that I did, because this is after a lot of work. I initially wanted this to work with Bluetooth.
Right. That the latency on that would probably be an issue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the thing with Stubmania is I can set a latency, which is very, very handy.
Yeah.
So That's the script. So what I did was I programmed the Raspberry Pi to run this script when it starts up. So when I plug it in, essentially all I have
woken up by the Bluetooth, by the USB.
Exactly. So what we could do now is show it to folks at home.
Yep.
Do you think? So let's, because I've got Stepmania running here.
This is a camera. So if we do, so that's, so the unfortunate bit is, so bottom left is the camera that's going to show the mini dance mat, the desktop format of the dance mat, unlike the big pink one we just saw. So unfortunately, I can't really make that bigger while keeping the screen on screen. So that's going to have to do. It's okay on full screen on my screen. It's okay. It's viewable. But yeah. Okay. Cool. So this is Stepmania. So for those who missed it, Stepmania is like a still maintained open source version of Dance Dance Revolution, which I can't believe that exists. I'm so happy.
Oh yeah,
it's a wonderful place.
Absolutely. So before we jump into Stepmania, let me just show you. This is a keyboard, and it presses buttons.
That's so good. Oh my god! And it still works after 3 years. That's wonderful.
It's a miracle. It's not perfect. You just saw that.
Yeah. So for folks who jumped on through Layla's raid and you missed this, the black stuff on that mat is conductive paint. When it gets touched, it sent like the piece of hardware it's plugged into, the bare conductive Pi cap detects that capacitive touch, and it's sat on top of the Raspberry Pi's GPIO, so it then sends that signal through, which is then getting passed by this script and sent as a key press, and then this Raspberry Pi is set up as a USB gadget and then has some additional stuff on top of that to make it to register it as a keyboard, which it's doing via sending these key presses into a file that's being read as keyboard input, which is delicious. Perfect. We need a flowchart.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe before we jump in, these are the electrodes I was talking about before. Just for folks who are joining in later. So these are wired up by a crocodile clips to each of these pieces of paint, and these pieces of paint are capacitative, which means they detect when I touch them.
Right.
So that's that. Now we'll jump into Stepmania.
Amazing.
So I've wired up Stepmania to be able to detect those key presses you were seeing before as legit button presses. So I checked with Joe before. I hope the volume's okay. If it's too loud, chat, please speak up. But here we go.
And it is coming through a speaker, so it won't be the best quality. Just prepare for that. But the volume level was good. But yeah, as I said, let us know, chat. Keep the dance platform a safe distance from your monitor. I don't know. That dance platform is very close to your monitor.
So I'm going to be doing this one-handed, so I'm going to be absolutely horrible and play on the easiest difficulty.
I mean, you're holding an iPad, looking at your dance mat on your desk right now. Like, this is beautiful.
Really? Yeah. My wife is going to help me. Say hi to the chat.
Amazing. Hi. Thanks for your help. Hi.
So, okay, now I've got two hands free. Thank you so much.
Now we can see your full pro skills.
Yeah, sure. Let's go on easy because I am live and I don't want to make a complete fool of myself. So what we've got here is Stepmania running.
Cool. God, this looks good. Amazing.
As you can see there, as I press the buttons, the Raspberry Pi is basically sending key presses to the computer.
That's so cool.
And simultaneous
press. Yep. Multi-press. Nice.
This is not as easy as with your feet.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, damn. Are we going to get copyright struck? I'm sure it'll be fine.
Oh, no, I didn't think of that.
No, me either. It's all good. It's from 1990. It's an older song. I'm sure it'll be fine. And it's barely coming through.
True. Konami has bigger problems on their hands anyway.
Yeah. Amazing.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And you did this at a conference? Did you do like a demo of the full-size one on stage?
Not the full-size ones, but I demoed this one.
Yeah.
I flew it all the way to Thailand earlier this year.
Amazing.
And it survived.
Yeah. Oh, you said that the dance mat itself is made of something.
Oh, yes. We're going to get to that when I get my grade. I hope you don't mind, folks, if I finish this.
No, please do. Like I'm impressed how well you're doing.
Not too bad. I'm almost dead.
Floor said Ramón rocking out.
I wouldn't call this rocking out.
I mean, there's a lot of flawless, perfect and flawlesses in here.
We're almost there, folks. There's a long one.
Cool. That's the simultaneous.
There we
Like,
go.
the having to hold it. You said it. Thank you so much for your help again.
Thanks, Bigot. Okay, so I got a D. That's not stellar, but
I mean, considering the circumstances, I think it's pretty good.
Flora asks, "Can you make this with a makey makey?" Absolutely.
Yeah, the makey makey will basically let you skip all of the keyboard stuff, right? It would just be a keyboard. Yeah.
So here comes the plot twist.
Yeah.
This is cardboard that I've painted it on, and I needed a small piece of cardboard. So I took an old pizza box.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's
hacking.
That's Matt.js.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Floor said, "Can you just makey makey?" Makey makey is a really interesting device. So makey makey is basically it's essentially an Arduino, but like with these kind of conductive, capacitive electrodes on it already, and it's like set up to be just a detected as like a keyboard device essentially. And so each of the conductive tips, it's just like basically Ramón has made a makey makey. But what's cool about this thing that you've done is like one of the criticisms of the makey makey. It doesn't feel fair to call it a criticism, but one of the potential criticisms of makey makey is that it's actually quite expensive for what it does. Like for just being a USB device with conductive stuff, it's like it. I mean, at the time when I was doing a lot of makey makey stuff in like 2016, they were like $50-ish, which like when you compare that to just an Arduino or just a Raspberry Pi is quite a lot for what is essentially like just a crocodile clip keyboard. And you can do really cool things with it, like plugging bananas into stuff and using it as a keyboard, and that's really fun. But like if you're trying to kit out a classroom to teach them this stuff, it's a very expensive device. So the fact that you can do essentially you've made a makey makey on like a $10 Raspberry Pi Zero is super cool.
I mean, there are other expenses too, of course, like the paint itself. I forget how much I paid for it. I think it's something like...
I linked it in the chat. You can buy a pot of it for €50, it was. But like conductive, a lot of the conductive, same sort of conductive ink, like the way they are conductive is, they have conductive metals in the ink. So they are unfortunately expensive products. But
yeah. But I mean, and what I learned about this and the things that this demo leaves out is the amount of prototyping that went into it.
Right.
If I can I just bring up
I'll put it back. Yeah, no problem.
One last time, I promise.
No, it's all good. You're welcome to as much as you want.
So what you see here,
the damaged,
that is the let's say the unfortunate parts of this project. I initially bought the paint. Thanks, Joe. Yeah. I initially bought the paint. I made a Mark 1 that connected. I basically taped the Raspberry Pi onto the pizza box,
right,
and just painted the cable over instead of using crocodile clips.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I went on stage, so I was going to go on stage and demo this at Half Stack Vienna,
right,
and I just wanted to make sure that everything was fine. And then I tried to fix some of the paint, and then it kind of spilled over to other electrodes. And then I was like, okay, maybe if I use some water, like it's just very carefully with a Q-tip, just like clean it a little bit, and then it got worse. It just kept spreading and spreading. It's just like I couldn't demo it that day. I just kind of held the Raspberry Pi and just tapped it like that. To do the demo.
Sad.
It happens, but
for sure.
That's the thing. Like, you gotta like. I learned that I gotta be willing to experiment and not be afraid. This will break and it will incur a cost. And if I can, and if you can afford it, if it's available to you, if you've got the resources, you can try again. It's like software, except a little more breakable.
yeah, absolutely. And on that note, Floor said, you already have a Makey sustainable. Yeah, absolutely. You've got them 100% go out and get a Makey. They are so fun. I was just like kind of looping around to that, like I guess how a Makey stacks up to doing it the way you have. But no, I love Makeys. They're so good. I used to do a lot of. We were talking earlier in the show about teaching kids to code. When I was in university, it was a time in the UK when they were changing our like K-12, like our young high school and preschool. They were changing the computing curriculum from IT to computer science. So the government suddenly said, hey, this year, IT teachers, you teach Microsoft Word and Excel. Next year, you're teaching Python. And all of the computing teachers in the country just went like, I mean, none of us are trained in that. Like, what are you talking about? That's like, we're IT teachers, not computer science teachers. And so we spent a lot of time that summer helping IT teachers, like, basically, like, get a hang of the new computing curriculums. And one of the things we were doing was taking makey-makeys around classes and like teaching kids to use on that. So this kind of stuff is like, this is why I was very excited to kind of jump to this from what you were saying about teaching kids to code. And I think this is very in the spirit of exploration and doing cool random things.
Absolutely. Sadly, I never got to doing this kind of making stuff with the kids. We were no longer doing the after school activity at that time, but it's a ton of fun, and there's so many cool kits you can do. If you're new to hardware stuff, there's a lot of Pi Moroni has so many cool kits you can make.
I'll put a link to that in chat. So one thing, we haven't really spoken about what you do differently, but one thing you were saying was there was some hardware changes you'd make if you were doing it now, right?
So absolutely. I mean, when I first demoed this thing, the first question I got from someone was, "Why didn't you just make this in Arduino?" To which I replied, "Great point. Just a quick question. What is an Arduino?"
Right.
And so that's how I learned what Arduinos are and how there's much less of a let's say a Linux layer involved, and allows me to interact with a computer much more directly as a USB device and they have Pi caps for Arduino, but they don't have. So that copy just wrote Arduinos don't have HID. So I would have to go about it differently.
Right.
But I think it's for the purpose of what a Raspberry Pi does, which is a processing device. Right. Which is more of a device for doing processing and web stuff. Having it do just a strictly hardware thing, there are more, let's say, I wouldn't call it fiscally more efficient, but definitely more maybe energy efficient way to do it. Say with an Arduino, I would have to worry a lot less about, for example, maybe I wouldn't have to worry about the HID. I could set it up as a game controller.
Yeah. There are definitely, I think there are Arduinos that have HID, because like the makey is, I think if I remember correctly, is an Arduino. Well, is like at its core it's an Arduino, and then it has additional things on the board. And I think the Yun, which is a Arduino which was made for like IoT stuff, I think the Yun also had some kind of HID. But yeah, I'm sure there is something in the Arduino family of devices that has HID. Maybe I might be wrong. Only the Pro Micro and Leonardo. Oh, there we go. That copy actually answered exactly what I was theorizing on in the chat. Thank you. Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah.
So I mean, I think a lot of this, the thing about this project is I'm really glad I did it the way I did it. Yeah. Because I learned about better ways to do it. For example, as I mentioned earlier, I was initially doing my cables. Yeah. Let's call them cables as paint. Because I thought, well, I've got the paint. Why not just go all paint all the way?
Yeah.
Exactly. So the whole point of the bare conductive paint is that I can do that. However, for doing cabling, I had to figure out things like, let's call it cable routing.
Right.
If you know what I mean? Because unlike wires, I can have wires hop over touch and go over each other because they're protected by this plastic. Around
them. But if you did it with the paint, you'd have to keep the board on the mat or something like that, which is a terrifying prospect when you're stamping on things.
Exactly. I mean, just the thought of accidentally stepping on this thing already had me not a good idea.
Right.
But also for things like figuring out a way to get 4 or 8, if you've got 2 players, 4 of these cables running to the Raspberry Pi in a way so that they don't they don't touch over each other. I need to start. I found myself in a lot of ways painting myself into a corner, which is all more apt now that I think about it.
Perfect.
I was literally painting myself into several corners because I had to think of ways that I could wire this paint so that it didn't touch the other arrows, the other paints.
Yeah.
But the great thing is that by doing this, I could have as big buttons as I want.
Right.
The shape of buttons as I want.
Yeah.
This could essentially.
I guess as they get bigger, the values. So you showed us in the code that there was like a threshold. There's like a range.
Yes.
I imagine as the buttons get bigger, you see different capacitance in different places on that button.
Absolutely. I mean, not just that, but if you have a long cable of paint, then you have to worry about more fault points.
Right.
In the wiring itself.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it was a fun project, and there's definitely ways that I could do it better. I think I would also want to improve on it. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to do it initially with Bluetooth, but my goodness, Bluetooth is hard.
Yeah.
If you're not experienced with it, trying to pair a Raspberry Pi with a computer programmatically was
and as a keyboard, which like multiple times, you already had enough issues with that as it was. Yeah.
True. Yes,
Yeah.
as a keyboard, it was. I mean, I would love to challenge myself to try something like that again.
Right.
See where it goes. I think
Yeah.
other things I would do differently is perhaps I put this up on GitHub, and I think it was last year or the year before for Hacktoberfest. So staying on topic, somebody submitted a pull request that cleaned up my god awful JavaScript because I'm not as experienced with JavaScript as I'd like to be. So I was using lots of var declarations for everything because it worked, and it's what I remembered from my CoffeeScript days.
Right.
So.
Oh, those days.
Those days.
Yeah.
CoffeeScript being an old way, a kind of Python Ruby-esque way of writing JavaScript that would then compile.
Which is now, I guess, obsoleted is the correct word because a lot of the features of CoffeeScript ended up in ES6, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, and it was just a ton of fun. If I can say anything, it's just that try stuff out, get out there. There's lots of kits. I have a whole drawer with a bunch of Raspberry Pi toys. Like
nice.
They're super fun. They're not affordable enough to be able to be as experimentative, but they have a whole bunch of little boards you can put on the hat.
Oh, that's super cute.
So this is a little piano.
Oh, that's amazing.
They've got, I don't actually know what this is. I haven't gotten around to playing with it yet.
It looks like
an LED
clock interface. Yeah, rainbow hat. Huh, okay.
They've even got electronic ink screens.
Yeah.
So cool. I was given this.
Pimeroni do a very good one of those.
Oh yeah,
the rainbow hat's Pimeroni as well. Okay, cool.
Yeah, these are all Pimeronis.
Awesome.
I think. They've got a whole bunch of fun stuff you can play with and just and just mess around with. I mean, since it is a Linux machine, I was able to. So I'm not a hardware. I'm more of a software developer. Right. I was able to leverage those skills that I had as a.
I mean, that was Node.js, which is like not traditionally something people attach to embedded electronics, right? Like
exactly. But since it was there and it was possible, I just went for it.
Very cool. That's awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, I guess that brings us to the end. We've gone way over time, which is surprising. So thank you for staying extra. I'm so sorry. I hope you didn't have another call after this.
All good.
But yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us and for spending this time and running us through your career and freelancing tips all the way through to an awesome hardware project that I'm super glad we got to see.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. And thank you all for tuning in.
Wonderful. Cool. I will backstage you and do the outro. So I'll see you soon. Farewell.
See you later.
Thank you again, Ramon. That was super fun. So yeah, just a summary of everything we did. And for those of you who came with Layla's Raid, thank you so much for being here. Ramon, we started off talking about his career and how he got into freelancing and how all that happened. And we spoke about getting freelance clients and managing like jumping between projects and getting embedded in code bases that you're not working on for a long time as a freelancer. We went from there into some of his teaching people to code and working with kids on coding and the things it helps you question and like explore in way like assumptions you took for granted that you then get to explore and find cool new things. And that led us into this wonderful Raspberry Pi HID controller Java Node.js app dance controller, which was super cool and such a wonderful series of hackery, a proper Rube Goldberg project. It's very cool. So don't go anywhere. We stream 3 times a day. For those of you who came with Layla's Raid, hi, welcome to the Hacktoberfest Help Desk. We stream 3 times a day. We've got 2 more days of shows. Let me run you through the schedule to come. You can find our schedule at twitch.tv/RaisedDevSchedule. We've got 2 more days where we're streaming 3 days a week. So we've got 1 more show today in about 4 hours. No, 4 hours. In about 4 hours. We've got 1 more show today in about 4 hours. And then we're back Thursday and Friday with 3 more shows, each with special guests like Ramon. You can find our schedule at twitch.tv/RaisedDevSchedule. Let me give you a brief teaser of what is to come. So this afternoon, our last show of the day is Angel Rivera from Circle CI. Thanks for being here, Ramon. It's Angel Rivera from Circle CI, diving into CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, all things that with our founder. They're going to have like a one-on-one chat. We're like, hey, what's CI? Because it's come up a lot on this show while we've been streaming. You've seen lots of people do clever things with CI. I saw Hugh in the chat earlier. Hugh shows loads of cool like CI tricks in his show. So if you're like, cool, like this all looks really interesting. How can I use it? How should I use it? What should I be doing that I'm not doing? That show is going to be for you. Tomorrow, the first of our shows is with Gianluca, who is on the release group at Kubernetes. We're going to be talking about ways you can contribute to projects that aren't just code related. And one of the way we're going to explore tomorrow is helping out with software releases. So Gianluca helps prepare the releases for Kubernetes and get them out the door. Really important task for a project that big, that used. That's going to be a super cool show. Then we've got Nathaniel from Twilio. That's another one of these old code review episodes. We're going to be looking at the first JavaScript project that Nathaniel ever made back in university and what he'd do differently after a couple of years in the industry, now that he's been working. Sam Lanning is our last show of the day. They're a developer at the UN, which is very cool. And that's another hardware project, actually, a hardware adjacent project. Sam's bringing an old project of theirs called Synesthesia, which is a project for interactive light and sound installations at festivals. It's super cool. It's made for like controlling light strips and interacting with music. And we're going to be taking a look at that project. Then Friday, the last day of our stream for Hacktoberfest, is Nicholas Carrigan, who's a developer who's been hanging out a lot with us here on the chat, who's joining us. I'm super excited that we get to meet them after hanging out with them so much in the chat. Eddie, who's an open source advocate, does a lot of work helping people with open source, helping them get into open source. We're going to be talking to Eddie as kind of like a reflection on how Hacktoberfest has gone, what he's been up to, what he's been doing, how he thinks it all went. And then the last show, for those of you who don't know, Hacktoberfest is run by an app, an open source app on the DigitalOcean GitHub, just called Hacktoberfest. That's the app that keeps track of like how many pull requests you've done, registers users, that kind of thing, checks for all the spam rules, checks for the abuse rules, does all of the management of Hacktoberfest. That app was originally made by someone who works here at Raise.dev. It was made by Raise.dev, in fact, a year ago. Chris Ewald was the team lead who led that project. And so a year ago, Chris made that app. And today, Matt Cowley, who is on our show today, who works at DigitalOcean, maintains that app. And so the last show of Hacktoberfest here on the show is going to be Chris, the old maintainer, and Matt, the new maintainer. And we're going to do an old maintainer, new maintainer, look at this app, talk about how it all works, talk about what the constraints were when Chris made it, and what has changed now under Matt's maintenance, and things they do differently, and things they'd like to do, and looking towards the future of the app that makes Hacktoberfest happen. So I'm really excited for that. I think that'll be a great way to say goodbye to Hacktoberfest for the year. Looking forward to next year. So that's our last show tomorrow, and I said you can see that schedule at twitch.tv, RaiseDev's schedule. And if you want to get notifications when we go live, you can drop us a follow on Twitch. You can hit the love heart, then hit the bell, and that will get you all the notifications. And you can also follow us on Twitter at RaiseDevs, where we tweet an hour before every show. And the last thing for me before I leave you and see you hopefully again in 4 hours, if you haven't heard of Raise.devs before, if you're new to us and wonder what we're about, we are a service to help you level up in your developer career. Basically, we have these expert coaches, they're developers from all kinds of industries, all kinds of backgrounds, who want to help other people enter this industry and get their start in this industry and be paid what they deserve and get basically have a great career. And how that works is they will match up with you and they will work with you on your skills. They'll pair program with you, they'll work on projects with you, and they will help you get the experience that you need to get your first developer job or get a promotion, get a raise, whatever it is. And we are pretty new. We launched the last week of September, and so we're in what we call early access, and so we're completely free at the moment. We're completely free whilst we're in early access, and you can meet up with a coach and pair program completely for free. How are you going to survive out watching us 3 times a day? I don't know, Floor, but I can tell you I'm going to do a lot of sleeping, and as much... It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. However, we don't know our exact schedule after Hacktoberfest yet, but we will be streaming after Hacktoberfest. Probably not 3 times a day. We're thinking probably twice a week. But we will be back. We will be here. I feel like I live in your house by now. Accurate. Yeah. I'm on everyone's screens all the time. Anyway, I'm going to get off your screen right now. Thank you again to Ramon. Thank you all for being in chat and hanging out with us. Our next show is in 4 hours. I hope we see you there. But until then, have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is. And if we don't see you at the next show, I hope to see you sometime soon. Farewell. Goodbye. See you later.